This is an instructional video on the Pythagorean Theorem. The Pythagorean Theorem is only used for right triangles. So a right triangle looks something like this with the square 90-degree mark noted in the corner. On a triangle, the sides of the triangle, labeled A and B, are called the legs. The diagonal line C is called the hypotenuse. It's important to note that C is always the longest side. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take the equation a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and that's how you solve the problem. Important to note that your last step is to take the square root. The square root symbol looks like this. For this problem, you can see the 90-degree mark in the corner, which means that those two edges are A and B, and our longest side, the diagonal line, is C. So we're going to take that information and we're going to plug it into our Pythagorean Theorem equation. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 5, b is unknown, and c is 13. We can go ahead and solve it. 5 squared is going to give us 25. 13 squared is going to give us 169. To combine like terms, 25 and 169 are on opposite sides, so we do the opposite operation. Instead of 25, we do a minus 25. 169 minus 125 is 144. Our last step is to take the square root, and we get b equals 12. Square root of 144 is 12. Again, looking for our right angle mark, we can go ahead and label our legs A and B, which means the other line, the longest side, the diagonal line, is C. We're going to plug in our numbers for our legs. A is unknown, B is 6, and C, our hypotenuse, is 10. When we solve the problem, 6 squared is going to give us 36. 10 squared is going to give us 100. Combining like terms, 36 and 100 are on opposite sides, so we do the opposite operation. Instead of plus 36, we do the opposite. We do a minus 36. 100 minus 36 is 64. Our last step is to take the square root. The square root of 64 is 8. Looking at our right triangle 90-degree mark, we can label our legs, B and C, A and B, and label our hypotenuse, the diagonal line, C. Using that information, we can plug those numbers into our Pythagorean theorem. A is 16, B is unknown, and C is 24. Solving the problem, 16 squared is going to give us 256. 24 squared is going to give us 576. To combine like terms, 256 and 576 are on opposite sides, so we do the opposite operation. We do a minus 256. 576 minus 256 is 320. Our last step is to take the square root. The square root of 320 is going to give us 17.88. We look at our second decimal place, And we have to round up. 5 and higher, 8 is higher than 5. 5 and higher, we round up. So 0.8 rounds up to 0.9, 17.9. Looking at our right triangle mark, we label our legs A and B. We label the diagonal line C. Plugging that information in, we use our Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 12, b is 10, c is unknown. Solving the problem, 12 squared is going to give us 144. 10 squared is going to give us 100. Combining like terms, 144 plus 100 is going to give us 244. Our last step is to take the square root of 244, and we get an answer of 15.62. We look at the 2, it's 4 or less, so we round down, 15.6. We round down. Again, we go ahead and label the edges of our triangle, label the longest side C for the hypotenuse, and plug in our values to the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 8, b is 15, c is unknown. 8 squared is 64, 15 squared is 225. 64 plus 225, because they are on the same side, we combine those like terms. We get 289. Our last step is to take the square root, and we get c equals 17. We always start by labeling our sides A and B. They do not matter which side is labeled A and B, as long as the diagonal line is labeled C for the hypotenuse. We use that information to plug it into the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 14, b is 20, c is unknown. 14 squared is 196. 20 squared is 400. Combining our like terms, we can add 196 plus 400 to get 596. Our last step is to take the square root. The square root of 596 is going to give us 24.41. Looking at the 1, it is less than 5, so we're going to round down, 24.4. For this next problem, again, we always start out by labeling our right side edges and labeling the longest side, the hypotenuse C. We next plug in our numbers into the equation. A is 5, B is 15, C is unknown. 5 squared is 25, 15 squared is 225. Combining like terms, 25 plus 225 is going to give us 250. The last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. The square root of 250 is going to give us 15.81. Looking at the 1, it is less than 5. 5 and higher we round up, 4 and less we round down, so 15.8 we round down. For this problem, again, always label your sides first. A and B are the right-hand angle sides. C is the diagonal, the hypotenuse. We plug our information into the equation. A is 12, B is unknown, C is 20. 12 squared is 144, 20 squared is 400. To combine like terms, 144 and 400 are on opposite sides, so we do the opposite operation. We do a minus 144, and we get 256. The last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. The square root of 256 is 16. B equals 16.